Hi, it's Margaret, and today I am going to be doing a little tour of my front porch containers. Now, earlier on in the season, I did a video on getting the containers planted up, as well as purchasing some of the annuals that went in there. And some of the annuals actually that are on my front porch, I started from seed. Specifically, a lot of the coleus that are there, I started from seed. So I thought it would be good to give a bit of an update because actually it's starting to get cool now, and it won't be too much longer until the season is basically done and all of these pots will be gone. They did really, really well this year. They did take a little bit of time to get going, but overall I am really happy with how they turned out. So just to give a little bit of a backstory in terms of my porch, it is a north-facing porch and it is also a covered porch. It's sort of enclosed on both sides in terms of a little bit of protection from the wind and things like that as well, with some tall spruces. It is essentially a full shade area. The bottom part of the steps does get a little bit of sun, maybe an hour and a half or so later on in the day, but otherwise it doesn't get any sun at all. Specifically, about halfway up the steps and up, it gets absolutely no sun. For a full shade area, there is a ton of color here. So as I said, I'm really happy with how it turned out, and let's go take a look. And here we are. Here is what it looks like now. I love it so much. I mean, who would think that this is a full shade area? So let's just get a closer look at some of these plants. Oh, and before I go in, let me just say I actually did end up adding a couple of extra pots, more than a couple, I think. I think I added at least 4 pots to the original configuration. A couple of the steps have 4 pots instead of the 3. But otherwise, it's the same plants. I did do some rearranging. Let's just go dive in and see what we have and how it's looking now. So here on this side, I have a couple of coleus that I grew from seed. This one here, and quite a few of them, are from a mixed seed packet. And I kind of love that, with the dark purple on the inside and the limey green on the outside. And beside it, though, is one of my hands down favorites. There's 2 actually in here that I really, really love and that I'll definitely be growing next year again. And this one is the Colocha Sunset that I grew from seed. It's gorgeous. And not only is it gorgeous, but it also doesn't really flower that much, which when it comes to coleus is a really good thing because we don't really grow coleus for the flowers, we grow them for the leaves. So let me just take a little bit of a close-up view on this one. I mean, look at the veins. The veins are a bright, bright purple almost. Then you have that coral color in between, and the edges, they're scalloped and have a bright green edge on them. I mean, this one is absolutely a keeper. And look how beautifully it works with the begonia beside it. Now, as I said, these have flowered only sporadically. So, for example, I have a little flower bud here, and I'll just pick that off. And really, it hasn't really been much of an issue at all. So just to show how much it's grown, I'm actually just going to move this pot out of the way because these 2 here, this begonia and this coleus, are actually in the same pot, and it's not a huge pot. So I'll just show you here. Here's the pot, and it's like a 12-inch pot. But if I move these, so this here, look how gorgeous that looks, all in one pot. I think I have some footage of what this pot looked like when I first planted it up. And I mean, all of the plants were significantly smaller than they are now, but also just to show that you don't really need huge pots to get a huge display and a really impactful display. Okay, so I just moved the other pots back. So as I said, this guy here is started from seed from just a mix. Then I have a caladium that I had the tuber for. I started it really, really late, but I just threw it in here and it's, giving a little shot of color in this little spot. And then over here is Campanula, and that actually is doing a lot better than it was. It was very floriferous when I first got it, but what happened was I noticed as it was growing that it had originally been planted up. I got it from a nursery in one of those little plugs that has that sort of mesh around it. It almost looked like the plant was dying because the roots were not able to kind of penetrate that mesh that well. And I decided to actually dig up the plant, remove the mesh, and put it back in. And it took a while to recover. This is a perennial, so I am going to be putting it in the landscape, and it is doing so much better now. Let's keep going up here. Now, over here we have a torenia or a wishbone flower. I mean, it looks like it could use a little bit of deadheading, but otherwise it's doing okay. And above that, look at the weird kind of variegation on this coleus. Again, this one is one that was grown from seed, and it's huge. That whole thing there is one plant. This one here is Sun Coral Candy, and it's an All-America Selections winner, but I have a much, much nicer one to show you. This one was in between a couple of pots where the foliage of the coleus that was beside it had grown on top, so it hasn't grown as large, but I will show you an awesome specimen in just a minute. Now look at this begonia. Oh my goodness. I love that so much. It is beautiful with the kind of curlicue thing happening there. I do know I have some footage of this guy when I first potted it up, and it has grown really, really well. Let me just pull it out there so you can see it. Whoops, in all its glory here. Look at this. Isn't this gorgeous? So I am going to be wintering this one over, or trying to at least. So up here on this step are more coleus I grew from seed. So from the seed mix, we have the pink and the green one. And then the Colocha Sunset, another one, is up there. And down here, we have a begonia that I bought at the garden center. Now, if you saw my earlier video where I potted everything up, I did mention that I was going to be doing a slightly different color scheme in the front using yellows and corals based on a couple of plants that I saw that I really, really liked that had beautiful flowers, such as this one. And it actually worked out really, really well. I'm very happy I did that. Everything blends in pretty well. So now let's go to the other side here. And here on the right is the streptocarpela that was actually beside the front door. I moved it down here because it didn't seem to be doing as well. Even though this here is an absolute full shade spot as well, I think it got a little bit more moisture here and it really appreciated the rain versus just watering. So it's doing beautifully, really, really nice. And I am hoping to overwinter this one again. This, as I said in the original video, was a plant that I overwintered. I literally just brought it in the house and treated it like a house plant all winter. The flowers kind of faded. I got the occasional flower over the winter, but then I brought it out in the spring with everything else. And in the last, I'd say month and a half or so, it has really, really done well. Beside that is another gorgeous begonia, and this one again I am going to try to overwinter because I mean look at those leaves. Now this one does sporadically flower. I can actually see a little flower in here, but this is not why you grow it. This one is absolutely for the leaves. The curlicue one beside it, another one like the one on the other side of the stairs, hasn't flowered at all. There is another begonia that I really like, and it's sort of been overtaken by the wicked witch coleus, which is right up here. And it's this one here. These two are in the same pot, and I do have footage of what this looked like when I first potted it up. Now, this is two plants, and I think I sort of shouldn't have put two plants in there. I think one would have been more than enough because this is all in that one pot. And then the begonia is trying to peek out from underneath. Still doing pretty well though. I really love the chartreusey color and how it has those blotches, the dark blotches along the edges. This is another begonia that I am going to try to save and overwinter. Over here is a round container that I planted up primarily with some Dusty Miller that I just bought and plopped in there. And it's actually worked out pretty good considering it's in full shade here, as well as a bunch of the seed sown coleus. And I enjoy all of these. They're probably not my favorites. I'm not really going to save any of these, but they have worked really well in here. Here's an interesting one. So here you can see is the Colocha Sunset. So you have the actual color, the typical color that you're expecting to get, but down here it's so much darker and you're not getting that coral color. But I mean, it's working, so I'm not upset about it. Now you can see the container down there, and it's really filled up. I mean, these coleus are 18 to 24 inches tall, I would say. Now coming here on the other side of the stairs is more seed sown coleus up there as well. And this one is the one I wanted to tell you about. This is the sun coral candy, the one that looks absolutely phenomenal. It's like a little waterfall there, and the color is absolutely gorgeous. That is one plant in one pot. And just like the Colocha Sunset, this one has not been a heavy flower producer, although I do see a couple of flowers on it right now that I need to pinch off. Overall, I have had to pinch off flowers maybe 2-3 times over the entire summer. So it really is a good performer. It's beautiful with those long, narrow leaves that have the green edges, the coral interiors. This one is definitely on my list for next year as well. So now we get to the pots at the top of the stairs, and I did move some stuff around. In this square pot, the only thing that actually stayed was the begonia here, which actually was in the back originally, and I moved it to the front, and I'll tell you why in a minute, and then the two ivies there. This pot was, I mean, it's looking nice now, but it didn't turn out like I expected. I initially had an impatiens in this corner, and this guy here was behind it. I thought, number one, this would grow a lot taller. It didn't. And number two, the impatiens had something wrong with it, I think. Some kind of disease or something. It literally sat there and then just started to decline, and it just got worse and worse, and eventually it was literally a few sticks with a couple of very sickly looking leaves. I just pulled it out because there was no hope for it, and because I had that big hole in the front, I didn't have anything to put in it, but I did have this coleus, which is a seed grown coleus that was kind of an extra in a pot. I decided to put this in front knowing that it was not going to be as tall, and because the other coleus in the garden had gotten so tall, I put that one in back. I only did this maybe a month and a half ago, I'm thinking, so now it was really tiny when I first put it in. Now it's kind of starting to achieve that height. It is quite late in the season, but it's okay. I'm actually really liking how it's looking right now. And let's just zoom in here on this particular coleus. Look at the markings on this. So unusual. I think I am going to try to save this one as well and overwinter it for next year. The great thing about growing coleus from one of those mixes is that you could get some really interesting color combinations like this one. And then on either side here, we have some impatiens, and these were also moved around. They were not originally here. So I have a couple on this side, and then I have one on this side of the door as well. And they're doing pretty well. I actually just deadheaded them a couple of days ago, so they're starting to flower out again. They have a lot of buds still on them. And these will keep going until we really get some cold temperatures. And that's about it. So some of those plants are going to go indoors with me over the winter. I am going to try wintering over several of the begonias, specifically the ones with those gorgeous leaves, as well as the Wicked Witch coleus. I'm going to overwinter again. And probably some of the other coleus that I have there as well. The ones that I grew from seed, that was the mix, so I'm not guaranteed, I guess, to get those exact colors next year again. I'll probably try to overwinter a couple of those as well. The Colocha Sunset and the Sun Coral Candy were really easy to grow from seed, so I'm not going to bother overwintering those. Those will just be grown from seed again next year. And yeah, so thank you so much for joining me today, and we will see you next time. Bye.